Breaking news, stimulating talk is what we do. KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
KVNU News Time is 5:03. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Roof Rescue. A new franchise concept is opening in Logan, offering fresh and ready-to-bake meals that can be picked up on site or even delivered to the home. Crust Club officially opens its doors on Friday at 981 South Main, Suite 180 in Logan, and features take-and-bake meals like pot pies, casseroles, pastas, soups, and desserts. And to celebrate its grand opening, franchise owner Lori Hemsley says thousands of meals will be given away for free.
The first 2,000 to come into the store get a free individual white chicken enchilada meal, and they're so good, one of my favorites.
They will also be giving away wooden spoons to the first 500 patrons. The original Crust Club is located in Pleasant Grove. Lori and husband Lance are opening the store's first ever franchise location, which allows people to take meals from the Crust Club kitchen to their own. Hemsley says the name invokes a feeling of being in a group of people who love good food.
So I love that it's just fresh food. It's home cooked. You know what's in it. You know, we can tell you all the ingredients. And you know how important it is to have family time, and our life is so busy nowadays. It's so nice to have this option to just come in, grab a meal, pop it in your oven, and have that time to spend with your family around the table.
Hemsley says the store will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and menu items have portion sizes appropriate for one person and dinners large enough to feed a family of 6. Orders for the meals can be placed online at crustclub.com or through the Crust Club mobile app. KBNU News Time, 5:05. KBNU weather for tonight. Mostly clear later on tonight. Colder, overnight low 15 to 20. Partly cloudy Friday morning, then clearing. High temperature in the upper 30s. Sunny and lower 40s on Saturday. It's been to 39. It's 35 right now at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. Don't pay for the expense of dry cleaning when you can clean your items at Mount Logan Laundry for much less. Located at 5th East, 9th North in Logan, Mount Logan Laundry has free Wi-Fi.
Roof Rescue is your local roofing specialist, dedicated to keeping your home safe and dry no matter the weather. Their team of experienced roofers is here to serve you, providing top quality service at affordable prices. From minor repairs to complete roof replacements, they've got you covered. Remember, your roof is your first line of defense in protecting your family from the elements. So don't wait until the next storm to discover your roof problems. Call Roof Rescue today at 435-999-4268. They're your trusted local roofing experts, here to keep your home safe and dry. Roof Rescue, celebrating 10 years of providing watertight peace of mind.
KBNU News Time is 5:06. Last year, the Division of Wildlife Resources fed deer in an emergency situation because deep snow made it difficult for deer to find food in parts of Cache, Rich, and Summit counties. This year, winter has been different, but the snow is not as deep and the cold has not been as bad as last year. Mark Hadley, Northern Region Outreach Manager for the DWR, said up to now Utah's big game have fared well this winter. DWR Big Game Coordinator Dax Mangus provided some information from his statewide big game captures this past winter. They recently finished December capture efforts associated with their deer survival study, where they checked over 900 deer across the state. They observed great above-average weights for fawns in central and southern Utah, including the heaviest fawns seen since they started the project on Book Cliffs, Monroe, Pine Valley, and San Juan. Hadley said with the mild winter and great deer condition, they are optimistic that they will see high overwinter survival for both does and fawns. Last year, DWR biologists, volunteer landowners, and hunters from local conservation groups started feeding deer at 11 locations in the state because of the emergency situation. A driver was airlifted to a nearby hospital in critical condition after rear-ending a stopped school bus in San Pete County. They later died from their injuries. Sergeant Cameron Roden with the Utah Highway Patrol said the crash happened a short time before 3 p.m. on US 89 north of Fairview at mile marker 285. He said the school bus was stopped to let children off when a Honda passenger car rammed into the back of the bus. All the children on the school bus were checked by medical personnel, and none required transportation to the hospital. According to Roden, another bus was sent to the scene to pick up the children. Officials were later updated that the driver involved was pronounced dead after arriving at the hospital. More additional detail, including the identity, gender, or age of the person who died, were not released. Both directions of the highway remained closed as crews investigated the scene and to allow the landing of the medical helicopter for transporting the driver of the car. KVNU News Time is 5:08. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
This is Dr. Red, chiropractic physician with Red River Health and Wellness. Are you suffering with fatigue, brain fog, headaches, intestinal issues, weight gain, and you haven't been able to find any answers?
Before I started at Red River, I was having a lot of stomach pain. I was overweight, severe anxiety, some depression. I had been to multiple doctors. I'd been to specialists. We had done tests, and no one could find anything that was wrong.
Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
I'm on anxiety medicine. I've lowered my dose, and I'm working with my doctor to continue to lower it. I'm sleeping through the night. I have energy for my kids. I've lost 30 pounds. I just feel really good.
Our goal is to teach you and educate you so you know how to manage your condition a lot more effectively, and you know what to do and what not to do for the rest of your life.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Friday on This Morning, America's First News, a recap of President Biden's State of the Union, plus his hypocrisy regarding what he sees as price gouging and corporate greed. Also, why blue cities are embracing more conservative anti-crime measures. And why is it such a pain to sometimes get a table for a larger party at a restaurant? Hear why some eateries don't like that business. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Hour 2 of today's show. I'm Jason Williams.
And because Charlie mentioned Paula Cole off mic, something about her that he didn't like, I decided to play Paula Cole there and dedicate it to Charlie.
Charlie and I got on a rant about my
90s music.
My unpopular opinion of 90s music. No one agrees with me. All my friends yell at me, but
they're passionate about this, huh? They yell.
Shania Twain ruined country. Charlie goes back a bit further. He blames it on Billy Ray Cyrus.
Boot Scootin' Boogie.
Boot Scootin' Boogie. As Charlie put it, when country was turned into a butt-shaking competition. I thought that was a great way to put it. But I get what Charlie's saying. It was sort of the popification of country, which, that wasn't the first time and won't be the last. But the 90s really were, in my opinion, kind of just a bleak era of music. And everyone always says, what about Nirvana and some of the rock that came out of that very short-lived grunge era? I'm not saying the music was awful. But
Pearl Jam started in the 90s, right?
And honestly, one of the most mediocre rock bands in history. And people get so mad if you say that. But I'm not saying they're bad. And I'm not saying people are wrong for liking them. But I'm saying stop pretending it was this groundbreaking era of rock music. Nirvana was just a louder version of 8 other rock bands that had done the same thing before. Everyone was like, oh, no, Kurt Cobain.
Well, it was a movement, the grunge
Well, I think it just seems so unique because it came on the heels of the 80s when everything was electronic and overproduced and kind of over-the-top, flashy, So you went from, the rise of Cyndi Lauper and Madonna.
Right.
And electronic music like Depeche Mode. And goth music was the alternative, like The Cure and kind of Depeche Mode 2 there, and it was so it was a very computer oriented and kind of and I don't mean this as a negative necessarily, because I like a lot of the music that was cutting edge in the 80s, but it was a very cold, sterile, machine oriented. That's what I'll say. Musical era.
And then you had the Lilith Fair singers. You had Sarah McLachlan. You had Jewel. Well,
and so like the 80s is cold and sterile and electronic and mechanical, and then along comes Nirvana. They're playing guitars again.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Oh, this is new." No,
they're playing instruments.
It's not new. It's
I know what that is.
It's actually really old.
That's a guitar.
Yeah, that's my theory on how Nirvana got to be known the way. And my Pearl Jam opinion is one that upsets people the most. People can handle me saying I don't think Nirvana was really that groundbreaking. They were talented. Don't get me wrong.
Eddie Vedder does have an iconic voice.
Yeah, and I actually enjoy some of his solo music. I've never enjoyed. There are a couple songs, but I've never enjoyed Pearl Jam. Really, I just wasn't. It just seemed very bland to me. Yeah. So anyway, then along comes mid '90s. Shania Twain, Sheryl Crow, Four Non Blondes. I mean, you all know these one-hit wonders but it's all basically the same song with the same melody and the same, and it was this horrible era, and then it just got worse and worse and worse until we're talking about Oasis. That's another band. People are, Oasis, they're like a modern Beatles. Are they? Really?
No.
Weren't they just a very well-timed pop band? Yeah, that's what they were.
I think they had early, for a time, I think some of their members had early Beatles haircuts.
Yeah.
From the early Beatles.
Yeah. And then finally, we're drugged through, the late 90s, The Verve. Remember that? Bittersweet Symphony.
Which
that
was
one
actually
of the biggest hits, and it was just...
It was a Nike commercial.
Yeah, it was just a song for a commercial.
And it became... People what is that song?
Oh, the biggest pop hit of the late 90s.
Started showing up on the radio.
Yeah, it just... it was just a dark, dark era in music. And then luckily, the fever broke, and we settled back into... better times in the I guess late 90s, early 2000s, and but then I think we're kind of headed back into these things. I wish we ought to get Dave Denton on the phone for one of these conversations one day, Bill, because Dave could talk about these circular patterns in music. But you and I have discussed them before too, right? That there's a cycle, or history tends to repeat in music. And you see things come back that were popular once again, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're headed back into the 80s right now. And again, I'm not saying any of this is bad. When I say Pearl Jam is bland and mediocre, I'm not saying that you're wrong for liking them. I'm saying that's my opinion. And sometimes I think people are, because of the timing of certain music, or give it a little more credit than it deserves. But if you look at the long-term trends in this, you'll see these cycles and patterns, and I feel like we're about to head into, or I think we are currently in and kind of headed deeper into sort of a repeat of the 80s, where things start to get a little overproduced and maybe sterile on the pop front at least, but people are going to like it, and they're going to buy it, and artists are going to make money, and they're going to tour, and fun will be had, and I judge no one in any of this at all. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is when someone judges someone else for... I heard someone giving someone a hard time for being a Justin Bieber fan a while ago. Why do you care? How does it offend you in any way if someone... Even this was an adult, and this was an adult man who said, I think Justin Bieber songs are catchy. And everybody piled on, what is wrong with you? And why do you care? You don't have to agree. I think Justin Bieber songs are catchy. They're a little too catchy. That's why I don't like him.
Yeah.
But it's funny.
I guess they didn't like Justin Bieber has had. I don't know if he's still like this, but when he was younger, he had kind of a bad reputation for how he treated people.
Yeah,
and so maybe
kind
that's
of a jerk.
what it
is. Sounds like And also someone I'd put in the category of not all that talented, just well-timed. But again, I try to look at this as like, if you're angry about that, it's probably jealousy, but you can't judge someone for, and even if it's not them, maybe their managers, maybe someone around them made the decision correctly to time them well, but I don't care, more power to them. Made a lot of money, had a good time, entertained millions of kids and some adults, obviously, and it hurts nothing. You don't have to like it, but you also don't have to hate it. But yeah, I feel like we're headed back into steril's not the right word. How would you describe the 80s, Bill? I mean, it was really a very electronic era. Pop was over the top. You had
wild hair on men.
Cyndi Lauper had like a chess or a cross tic-tac-toe board shaved into the side of her head, and her hair was fire engine red and green.
It was the decade of Miami Vice, people wearing skinny ties.
Yeah.
That were pastel colors.
It was the decade when Axel F., the theme song from Beverly Hills Cop, became a top 40 hit. I can't believe I remember this. Harold Faltermeyer? Is that right?
Yeah.
The name of the artist? But yeah, this was literally just a synthesizer, a programmed song on a synthesizer. But that movie was such a hit, that song became a top 40 hit.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the best way to describe the 80s. A very generic, programmed, made with no real instruments, theme song of a movie became a top 40 pop hit. And I'm not saying this is bad. I'm saying this is a great way to describe the 80s. And I feel like we're kind of headed
Don Henley
there
emerged as a solo artist during the 80s.
Yeah. Also in a very generic way.
Glenn Frey as well.
Yeah. That's it was just it was like in the 80s it was like there was a template. And this exists a little bit all the time, but in the 80s there was like this template, and as long as you made your music with that template, your odds of being popular for at least a brief period of time were high. And then that same thing came back around mid-90s, even in country music. I think there was this template, and if you cut your song with that template, it was going to at least get some play and make you some money. And then I think that happened again around 2005, and I think we're headed back into it again in 2025. And it's I think it shows up right now mostly in the pop music that's getting a little repetitious. My point with all of this is check out this interesting article that I've linked to on our Facebook page where it talks about these cycles in music. A professor of sociology and a long-time music instructor that actually taught at USU for a little while, by the way, but works elsewhere now. They teamed up on this research, and they employed decades of sociology. They tried their best, they said, to tie this in with current events, too, because obviously current events can impact popular culture choices. Current events can make a movie popular or unpopular. Current events can make music popular or unpopular, a single song or an artist entirely. So they tried their best to account for that, but they said they realized early on that was near impossible. But what they found is that this is the theory they came up with. And Bill, if you think this is out there, because you know quite a bit about music as well, and Dave Denton, if you're out there listening, I want to know if you agree with this. So this is their theory. Their theory is that every musical era has a 7 to 10 year lifespan. 7 to 10 years, and then it either gets overdone or people just kind of burn out on it. And the thing that replaces it, the thing that gets really popular next in music, can't be similar. Does that make sense? So it can't be like a small variation. So if grunge is super popular, the next thing that gets popular is obnoxious, whiny pop. And that's exactly what happened in the 90s. So that's their theory. They said that musical tastes and cultural tastes around music tend to reflect this pattern. And they went all the way back. So they started with the first musical recordings that when records were first a thing that people actually bought and owned in their home, which was more than 100 years ago when technology existed. But it didn't really get popular till the 20s, 30s even, when people started actually owning music in their home. And so they went back as far as they could, and they just looked at music sales data. And they said that it fits this pattern pretty consistently throughout. 7 to 10 years, of a certain style being popular and then getting too popular and then starting to get less popular, and then eventually the bubble bursts. At 7 to 10 years, the bubble bursts. And then whatever comes next, whatever gets popular next, it is almost always completely different. And so if you track that pattern, next year would be the 7th year on our current musical era, they say. And so the bubble would burst at its earliest. Maybe it'll go another few years after that.
But there's some styles of music that have stuck around. I mean, like
blues. Blues has always been blues.
I was hearing on another radio station in our building here, they played Howie Day's Collide.
Oh.
Remember that song? Now, that song could be released today.
Yeah. That song doesn't sound dated, yeah.
It came out in 2003.
That's interesting to think about.
21 years ago.
That was, well, and some of the bands, there are some Rolling Stone songs from the 60s that you could hear today, and other than maybe...
Yeah, it sounds a lot better than the stuff. They just, and matter of fact, I think they just put out a new album.
I heard that one was coming, yeah. But yeah, like there are some bands, and even I would say some genres, like blues again I'll reference, that don't fit this pattern. Blues has had its heydays and low points as far as record sales and popularity and things like that. And it's never been a stadium filling, musical. Well, I don't know. John Mayer got close to it. He would fill stadiums, and if you went to one of his shows, he was basically playing the blues for 2 hours.
What's happened to John Mayer?
He went crazy. From what I've heard, he kind of went off his rocker and went in and it's kind of taken some leave. I don't know if he went crazy, but that's he said he went crazy. But yeah, there are certain genres that never really follow this pattern. But in general, pop music, popular country music, even popular college rock music follows this pattern, they said, where you can see this 7 to 10 year cycle, and then something completely different comes along and gets popular, and then gets too popular, and then starts to get less popular, and then the bubble bursts. And it follows the 7 to 10 year pattern for the last 100 years. Check it out. It's really interesting research. How they did it is almost as interesting as their theory. But what do you think? 753-5868. We'll be back right after this.
Hello, Cache Valley. This is Tom Hale at Blue Sky Restoration, formerly ARS. Remember, got a mess? Call ARS. We want to let you know that here at Blue Sky, we still have the same great staff, we provide the same excellent service, and are ready to help you in your time of need with water mitigation, mold remediation, or a fire. From Blue Sky Restoration, thank you for trusting our staff and myself for over 35 years with your disaster needs, and we will continue to be here for you.
They said if I got drunk,
if I did coke,
I'd be one of the guys.
They said meth would help me get through my exams.
They said synthetic drugs would give me a safe high.
They said sniffing glue was no big deal.
Totally safe.
I could party all night.
It would help me forget my problems.
He said he'd love me forever if I smoked crack with him.
They said I wouldn't get hooked after the first hit.
They said weed wouldn't lead to harder drugs.
They lied.
They lied.
They lied.
He lied. Find out the truth about drugs.
Drugfreeworld.org.
Drugfreeworld.org.
I will be right by your side.
Women can have it all, including heart attacks. But symptoms like jaw pain, nausea, unusual fatigue, dizziness, and backache are often different and more subtle than for a man. The fact is, heart disease is the #1 killer of women. Know the signs. Learn more at getheartchecked.org. From Women's Heart Alliance, in partnership with Women Heart.
Welcome back to KVNU. Shania Twain defenders are piling up in the chat. I'm not taking it back. She ruined country music for a decade. 753-5868.
We should get around the show.
If you want to yell at me for my musical opinions. But that's not fair to say she ruined country music. Speaking of this, just to kind of cap this, there are also, if you think about it, some musical, some folks. These people always kind of intrigued me. They were a bit more than one-hit wonders. One-hit wonders, you're never surprised when they come and go. That's what makes them one-hit wonders, right? They have their one song, super popular. Everyone knows it. Everyone can sing it. Most people probably bought it back when we bought music, and then 20 years later, you're having lunch with some friends, and somebody says, "Whatever happened to so and so?" And that's the first time you thought about them since that song was, popular in your own rotation. That's a one-hit wonder. But there are these other artists that were a bit more than one-hit wonders. They had maybe an album or a full album or even a couple albums that were popular. They were filling large venues on their tours and all of that, and then just disappeared. And that's something that's always intrigued me in music too. How that happens. Jewel is one that I think of. Jewel had, like 2 or 3 pretty decent hits. Very talented person. And then,
well, she fit the mold of what people were looking for, and came around the same time as Sarah McLachlan and Natalie Merchant.
Tori Amos.
Yeah. Although Tori Amos is kind of more of a. She has her followers. She never achieved top 40 claim.
No, she
was kind of an underground.
She had the one big hit with Little Earthquakes that almost got there, but she was always just a little too odd.
Yeah,
her music and her style of music was just not.
Well, I think top 40
fit
radio
top
stayed
40.
away. It just there wasn't a hook, and it was all kind of this composition,
sort of like spoken word with a melody. And that's why
I liked some of her songs.
I wanted to. I love pianos. I love the sound, and that's her instrument of choice. And so I wanted to like her so much, but the lack of a hook, the lack of a melody, a catchy part of the song that you can hum to yourself later, when it pops into your head. Her songs don't have that, and it annoyed me.
I do respect her because she never changed, really. I mean, she didn't, because some artists would say, well, they kind of sell out and put out a poppy song so they can
never did that.
Make some money. So she has stayed true to herself.
But she's still making that same music today, and she's still. Last time she was here in Utah, she filled the what are we calling it now? It was the E Center for a while, Maverick Stadium, I think, for a while out in West Valley City.
The Maverick Center?
Maverick Center is not stadium. That's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. She filled that a couple of years ago here in Utah. So, she's still popular with the crowd. But she's another example of someone who just got kind of big for a while and was selling a lot and then just sort of faded. But still around. And yeah. Music it's a very unpredictable thing, and there's no. I think it's sort of like the folks who are these days trying to figure out there are ad agencies that are pouring money into research to figure out how to go viral, and they've been doing this for 10 years, and and here's the funny thing about it: they will never figure it out. It's not stopping them from trying. Because the first person that does, they're thinking is never going to have to worry about money again, which is true if that ever happens. But it won't, because you'll never figure out how to go viral, because just like with music, no one knows. Everyone's trying to guess. Everyone's trying to predict. But
you never know what's going to catch on.
Yeah. And if you think about it, most of the biggest shifts in music, artists who've come along who kind of reset the direction of pop or country for a time, most of those, it was a combination of accident and timing that propelled them. Because oftentimes you go back and you find out they were doing this for years, or there were other bands that came before them that were doing the same thing as good. But this band, for whatever reason, was there at the right time in the right place, which is Nirvana's story, basically. That's why I refuse to see them as these rock icons, because they actually came midway through that movement. They were just well-timed, and MTV was looking for something new because they were losing viewers. and that first video just kind of propelled them into the spotlight at a time. But they were. Was
MTV still actually showing videos at that time?
That was the last. Those were the last days of MTV being that network. They actually played music videos, and then
they started MTV2, right, or M2 or something.
Yeah, then they're like, okay, the videos will be on MTV2. We're now,
and that's probably not even around anymore.
Yeah, we're now a reality TV / They had some great shows. They had these 2-hour shows where they'd focus on a certain genre of music and interview the artists, and I thought that was a great idea, but it just didn't work. It turns out people just wanted the videos.
What was it? VH1 Behind the Music.
Yeah,
that was
another one that was fun. It's a great Simpsons episode where they parody Behind the Music for the Simpsons family. Hilarious. I can't quote any of it on the show, but it is really funny. Anyway. Okay. That's enough opining about the pop culture. But again, a really interesting study. If you want to read it, it shows that there are these somewhat trackable, not to an exact science, not to the very year, not to the point where you could predict what's going to happen next year, but there are these very noticeable patterns in music where you see a lifespan for a certain style that everyone does until it gets too popular, and then they do it for a few more years when they should have quit, but they don't. And then the public finally reacts and says enough. They stop paying attention or buying it or listening to it. And then something else comes along, and that something else has to be very different. And the pattern holds up again and again and again. It's a really, really cool set of research with visualizations. So I've linked to it on our Facebook page. We'll be back with more of KVNU's For the People after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:34, and the news is brought to you by Bell Medical. Now that the smoke has cleared following the 2024 general session of the legislature, the details and the price tag for Utah's newly approved strategic homelessness initiative have emerged. Governor Cox praised the work of lawmakers addressing that concern, saying that he's grateful to live in a state where we take care of each other and the most vulnerable. The $66.2 million homeless package approved by the legislature includes funding for affordable housing, mental health services, shelter for families and the elderly, detox facilities, and youth shelters. The nonprofit Utah Impact Partnership has also committed an additional $15 million to help support the state's vulnerable population, making the total $81.2 million that Utah will spend on the homeless problem in fiscal 2025. The emergency shelter investments envisioned by lawmakers includes $25 million for low-barrier shelter development, $21.8 million for statewide homeless support, $2.5 million to mitigate homeless shelters in cities, and another $1.4 million for other shelter supports. A Provo mother and father were arrested and booked into jail Tuesday on child abuse charges after their autistic daughter was found chained to a bed in the home. The mother and father were both arrested on one count each of abuse or neglect of a child with a disability, a third-degree felony. The Provo Police Department stated the parents were arrested after officers visited the home and found an 8-year-old nonverbal child chained to a bed by their ankle. Arresting documents detail the Utah Division of Child and Family Services visited the home and witnessed the couple's daughter chained to the top level of a bunk bed in the living room of the home. Officers arrived and told the father to unchain the child. He initially refused, but then pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the padlock. After the chain was removed, officers witnessed impressions on the child's skin from the tightness of the chain. The father agreed to speak with officers, admitting that this was not the first instance of the child being chained to the bed. And a 17-year-old shot in a McDonald's parking lot in Murray has now died from their injuries. The incident occurred on Saturday near 4500 South and I-15. According to police, 3 teens were in a car when a gun went off, critically injuring one person. Police said the teen died on Tuesday. Following the shooting, 20-year-old Jean Alvaro Alarcon Paredes fled the scene and traveled to Colorado. Murray police contacted officials in Mesa County, Colorado, to help locate Paredes, who was wanted as a fugitive A deputy found Paredes' vehicle parked at an Exxon gas station in Fruita, Colorado. Upon investigation, Paredes was quickly identified and taken into custody. KVNU News Time is 5:37.
Wouldn't it be nice to lose a minimum of 2 to 5 inches of fat, just like that? At Bell Medical, with our uniquely patented FDA-cleared procedures, we are able to permanently remove that stubborn, hormonal fat that almost seems impossible to get rid of. And we are able to do it in a way that is so precise. We can guarantee a minimum of 2 to 5 inches of fat loss after 1 visit with us.
Schedule your free consultation at our bountiful clinic at bellmedical.com and let us make your dreams a reality.
ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. President Biden is preparing to deliver his State of the Union address. And ABC's Stephen Portnoy says he'll make history no matter what he says.
Tonight marks the 100th in-person delivery of the State of the Union address to a joint session of Congress. Over a century ago, Woodrow Wilson revived a tradition that began with George Washington in 1790. Joe Biden, who's been in the House chamber for most of the State of the Union addresses delivered over the past 50 years, will use his speech tonight to lay out his vision for the country.
Alabama Senator Katie Britt will deliver the Republican response. Families of some of the 19 students and 2 teachers who were killed in the 2022 massacre at Robb Elementary sat in shock as they listened to the results of an investigation which placed no blame on Uvalde, Texas police officers and defended their response. An earlier report described a cascade of failures. This is ABC News.
KVNU weather tonight, decreasing clouds, becoming mostly clear overnight, low 15 to 20, and then partly cloudy Friday morning, then clearing, high temperature in the upper 30s, mostly sunny on Saturday, high temperature in the low 40s, nice on Sunday, upper 40s for the high. It's been to 39, it's 34 right now at KVNU. If you own a business and your worker comp rates are skyrocketing, Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance has answers to your questions. For more information, go to q1ins.com. You can always get more news at CashValleyDaily.com.
Snow, rain, or sunshine, the Utah weather is unpredictable. This is Mark, an injury attorney with the Advocates. No matter what the weather is in Utah, we all need to be aware while driving or even walking into your favorite store. If you've been injured in a car, trucking, or slip and fall accident and haven't spoken to an injury attorney yet, call the Advocates today. There is no cost to you to find out if you have a case. Chat online at UtahAdvocates.com or call 801-355-5550. You deserve an advocate.
Attention Northern Utah. Tired of dry, irritated eyes? Ready to rejuvenate your look and refresh your vision? Mark your calendar for a night of radiance at the Northern Utah Eye Center's Ocular Aesthetics and Advanced Dry Eye Open House. Thursday, March 14th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Discover the power of IPL photofacials, Lipiflow, and Botox for rejuvenating your eyes and enhancing your natural beauty. Remember, March 14th. Reserve your spot now for special event-only pricing. Sign up through Facebook, northernutaheyecenter.com, or in office.
Friday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We'll roll you into the weekend with a breakdown of everything we heard at the State of the Union. Plus, we'll get you all ready for what could be basically the first weekend of the big race in 2024. All that and more, Friday edition. Come hang.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Let's go, girls.
Welcome back. Bill's just torturing me now.
Well, I felt a little sorry for Shania.
Ruined country music for a decade, which is an overstatement. There was a lot of great country music that came the same year and after, but she did take country music down a road that I did not enjoy for several years, at least as far as what was topping the charts.
She has a very compelling story, though, of how she got started. Didn't she have to raise her siblings?
Yeah, at least
after their parents were killed in a car accident.
She raised, I believe, a younger brother and a younger sister, and their parents were killed in a car accident. Both in the car at the same time, and it was, and she herself is a very likable person. If you've ever seen her in an interview or talking about her life, she's a very likable person. But ruined country music for a decade. I'm just trying to get a rise out of everyone, but I really thought someone would call in about my Pearl Jam comments. That's usually the one that gets people my age the most flared up when you say, Pearl Jam, they were actually pretty mediocre. So speaking of mediocre, you hear me say on the show all the time that if you want to make one positive change in your life, stop consuming cable news, because a couple of reasons. It stopped being news for the most part, and this is all of them. CNN, MSNBC, Fox. This is nothing to do with which one. So you have your Fox, which is, of course, leaning quite right. It's the Republican outlet. You have MSNBC, which leans quite left. That's the Democrats' outlet. And then you have CNN trying their hardest to be there in the middle and say we're still just a middle of the road politically news outlet. The problem is that, and I think CNN's correct in positioning themselves that way, but the problem is cable news, the whole model right now for making money in cable news just doesn't work for actual news. There was a day, Bill and I are both old enough to remember this, but remember before, I think it was before it was CNN, it was called Headline News, I think, or I can't remember.
Well,
but
there's CNN, and then there's, Headline News spun off of the regular CNN network.
So CNN was first, okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember who was first. I remember, though, that there were these days when it was literally a 24-hour looping news feed. I mean, it would repeat, and that's what made it.
Well, that was Headline News.
Yeah.
Or is it still? is Headline News still around?
They're still around, but it's
out
not
of the loop.
It's not the same anymore. They have like Nancy Grace or whatever.
Oh my goodness,
the ambulance chaser court reporter. So they're different now too. But actually, that's a great example, because that's what's become of the big cable news networks.
And on CNN, I think Patrick Greenlaw, who had been at Channel 2 for many years, I think he was kind of on the ground floor of CNN,
Was he?
as I recall,
I
when they
didn't know
first
that.
started.
Yeah, when they first started, they were actual news stations. And I remember people would complain that, if you watch it for 2 hours, it just repeats. And man, what I'd give now to go back to that.
It was so different. Because before that, you had the network evening newscast.
Yeah, you had
Walter Cronkite. And
so your news options throughout the average day was you had a once a day. I mean, this is pre-internet. So you had a once a day printed newspaper, maybe. You had top and bottom of the hour news breaks here on KVNU or your radio station of choice. And that's a 2 to 5 minute news break. And then you had your 30 minutes of evening news, and that was news. That was it.
I mean, the local stations had a noon news and all that.
Yeah, they do a longer show or something, and but then along comes. So you're in that's the environment you live in, and then along comes cable news, and suddenly there's this 24/7 news channel. You can tune in at any time, and if you watch for about half an hour, you're going to get most everything.
And I think CNN,
but it did loop, it did repeat.
I think they coined the phrase "breaking news."
Yeah,
because before that,
breaking
TV
news
networks
wasn't really
would
a
have
thing.
Well, they'd have news bulletins.
Yeah, because it was
special reports,
something important that happened, but probably earlier that day. And so breaking news was really a cable news thing. And
and they had a big thing. They had this graphic where CNN would go by your screen in huge letters, CNN, and then breaking news.
So they had the journalist there reading the news like a traditional television news anchor, and then they had the additional news in the scrolling ticker across the bottom. So you could just read while you're listening to the story they're talking about. You could just read the other headlines, and it was just headlines. But man, it was really news, and it was really, I think, useful. And flip it on now. Now it's 8 people who, Lord only knows why anyone should care what their opinions are.
Well, CNN may be undergoing a whole revamping, because they brought on a
third one in a row,
a CEO that's just looking to slash salaries and and everything.
And he's unpopular. He kind of stepped in it right out of the gate, and so he's probably gone soon. Anyway, so the problem is, though, is it's become... They're still holding on to the news, and they're still bringing you news, and they're still, if there is breaking news, CNN, Fox, NBC, all of them are going to go to it. So for breaking news, an event, remember the O.J. Bronco chase?
Yeah.
This was probably 17 seconds of video, and it filled the cable news networks for days. That's 17 seconds of video.
CNN owned the trial.
Yeah. And,
they had
CNN,
so many millions of people tuning in.
Oh, yeah. And they actually beat all the traditional network channels for a good month or so. Yeah, it was just, and so when things like that happen, they're still going to be all over it because that's, it's just free money for them. But on the average day, when there isn't a big breaking national story or even a really big state or local story that they can use, it's just people yapping about the news. And it's not very informative, and they actually don't cover that many stories. And there's an example of this. And again, remember, this is sort of my lecture to everyone. If you want to improve your attitude, your understanding, and I would say even your level of being informed, find something other than cable news. Just try it for a week and see if you find me to have a point. I think you will. But so here's a great example. CNN, Fox, and I can't see anything on MSNBC right now. But so Yahoo News has a news tracker, and they do this as part of their own online news feed. But they have a tracker up right now on what the cable news networks are saying about the State of the Union, which, mind you, has not happened yet. We'll go to it at 7 o'clock tonight here on our airwaves. So you can tune in at 7. You get an hour of Dave Ramsey. 7 o'clock, we'll move over to the State of the Union, and you can hear it live here on KVNU tonight. But my point is, it has not occurred yet. 7 o'clock tonight. But the cable news networks have been talking about it, according to the Yahoo Cable News Network tracker, since about, for CNN, it's noon. Fox and MSNBC. Fox is about 1 when they did their first little show. And the show titles, these are funny too. What to expect from the State of the Union tonight. Now here's a very practical one. USA Today with a story. What time is the State of the Union tonight? That one, we'll give them a pass for that one. Live updates and analysis of Biden's address tonight. Biden, State of the Union live. What to expect. Biden forced into historic moment, expected to give historic State of the Union address tonight. These are some of the things that they've been talking about since this afternoon on the cable, quote, news networks. And I'm not saying this isn't an important story. I'm not saying this isn't a diss on the president. This isn't a diss on the State of the Union being, this archaic thing that maybe doesn't need to happen anymore. Just put it on YouTube. Everybody will see it. But it's none of that. What I'm saying here is that these cable news networks have been talking about the State of the Union all afternoon long.
Slow news day.
And we'll continue to do until it happens. And then after it happens, you'll have the post-game analysis. While that's all happening, filling at least, I would guess in the end, this has filled 12 hours of quote-unquote news coverage on all 3 of the major networks, major cable news networks. Think of all the stories they weren't talking about. Think of all the state-level coverage they could have provided. Think about international stories that would be interesting to people and informative for people that they weren't talking about. Think about all the United States or even North American news stories that are relevant to us in any state. That would be interesting, that viewers might not hear about otherwise. And you've got this huge platform, millions and millions of viewers, but you're going to talk about the State of the Union for 6 hours before it happens, and 2 hours at least after it happens, if not more.
And then probably the next day.
And then, a good chunk into the next day as well. That's cable news. So that's my big criticism of cable news. We get lost sometimes, and people are like, "Oh, I don't watch CNN because they're biased." Well, they're less biased than Fox and MSNBC, so they're the best of the three. But that kind of misses the point. And the point I'm trying to make here is you have these 24/7 news networks, and that's still how they're billing themselves and selling themselves to advertisers and selling themselves to you as a news consumer. But what they brought you today for news was 6 hours of talking about the State of the Union, and 2 hours of talking about the State of the Union after it happens. That was their news lineup for today. That's not news. This is Cops with the TV show with a different subject. Same thing, though. It's just something entertaining to plug into. Doesn't cost you anything. Doesn't ask you to use your brain. And then you turn it off when you're bored. But that's the best thing they can think to do with the platform they have? Yeah. Send them a message and shut off your cable news networks. I guarantee you'll find yourself more informed, especially if you choose local news options. You'll find out more about what's going on around you. And every hour, half hour, even 10 minutes spent watching cable news, I guarantee you're learning less than if you spend that same amount of time on a local news option or even a statewide news option than the time you spend with CNN, Fox, or MSNBC on. So shut it down. We'll be back right after this.
Living room, bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen, family room, laundry room, mudrooms, and more. Deciding what flooring goes best in each room of your home can be a decision fiasco. Hart Floor Company helps people just like you make those decisions every day. Whether you're building or remodeling, Hart Floor Company will show you ideas with stunning designs and sensible solutions to fit your lifestyle. Whether it's carpet, vinyl, tile, LVT, or hardwood, make sure you visit Hart Floor Company at 390 North 10th West in Logan.
The Above and Beyond Salute.
Hello, this is Robert. My name is Will Feelright. I'm calling from KVNU. I understand you're a hospice nurse. Is that right? Yes, I am.
Well, someone in our community had contacted us anonymously, told us about some of the work that you have done helping their family members. And so to tell you thanks, we've got a $40 gift card for you from Firehouse Subs.
Oh, well, that's great. I enjoy what I do, and if I can make a difference, it's worth it. Thank you.
The Above and Beyond Salute, sponsored by Firehouse Subs on News Talk KVNU. 24 NCAA appearances, 17 conference championships, 10 tournament championships. New head coach Danny Sprinkle and the Aggies are carrying on their commitment to excellence.
Tip to Brown. Brown at the three. Yes! It's the three. What a shot.
The Utah State Aggies play here with pregame beginning 1 hour before tip-off, play-by-play and postgame interviews and Aggie call afterwards. It's Aggie basketball on News Talk KVNU.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Once again, I feel like it's been a show full of rants. At least it wasn't like all politics in my rants today. A little bit there with the cable news rant, but music and things like that. An eclectic hour of rants, but still trying to make sure we wrap up each show on a lighter note, if possible. And so today we're going to wrap up with just a little bit of, tiny little bit of history. So we're coming up on daylight savings time. And most people out there probably know the origins of daylight savings time. This was a wartime. Well, there were some areas that dabbled with this before for growing season reasons and things like that. Even in parts of Northern Europe, where their days are shorter, they dabbled with changing clocks and things like that, winter to summer. But in the U.S., this was really a wartime energy saving thing. At least that's how it was, first sold and how it was, originally thought of. But Ben Franklin, he wrote this satirical essay in 1784, and it was sort of making fun of daylight savings time. He in the satirical essay he wrote about moving the clocks around as a money-saving tactic. It's funny if you want to read that. And then years later, so that's the first time there was a mention of something like daylight savings time in U.S. history. Then 1895, an entomologist named George Vernon Hudson, he actually pitched it to the Royal Society, the governing body at the time in New Zealand, as a way to prolong daylight during bug hunting season. This was a thing that happened in New Zealand because there were some invasive species, but also them being an island, they had some native species that weren't great for crops, and it was causing some concern around that time. And so they talked about extending the day for a while to give people, more time to go out bug hunting after dark, but have it still be, a decent time of day to do it on the clock. But it wasn't until World War I, really, that under the explanation of this being an energy-conserving thing, and this was, to be honest with you, this was mostly about coal. And Germany actually was the first to give, World War I. I said World War II. But during World War I, Germany was the first to give a green light to daylight savings time. It was in 1916, and again, it was mostly about coal. It was extending the day to reduce the amount of coal being burned to light and heat homes. And then Britain and European countries followed suit. We didn't start it until 1918, and then we immediately dropped it. Immediately. And that's kind of a forgotten history of this. Everyone knows that this really took hold as an energy-saving thing in World War II. But yeah, the U.S. actually dabbled with daylight savings time way back in 1918, and then yanked it right back in 1920. Everyone hated it. So a little bit of history on daylight savings time. You notice as well, this didn't come up during the legislative session. That fever seems to have broken. Talk for years, session after session, of doing away with daylight savings time. I'm indifferent as long as we pick the right time. We're about to spring forward, and I'm okay if we never fall back again. But if we fall back and never spring forward again, I'm going to be mad. I love that 9 to 10 o'clock hour in June. I would hate to give that up. And most of the agricultural community agrees with me. So, if we get rid of it, spring forward, not fall back one last time. But lawmakers seem to